Welcome to Lost Love Mystery, where every story unravels a secret. So, let's dive into another story. The morning sun peeked through the curtains, casting a warm glow across our bedroom. I rolled over, my arm instinctively reaching for Emily's side of the bed, but it was empty, the sheets cold. With a sigh, I sat up and rubbed the sleep from my eyes. This wasn't unusual. Emily was always an early riser, whether it was a work day or not. I could hear the familiar sounds of her puttering around the kitchen downstairs. After getting dressed, I made my way to the kitchen. Emily stood at the counter, her chestnut hair tied back in a messy bun. She was focused on spreading cream cheese over a bagel, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Morning," I said, announcing my presence with a kiss on her cheek. Emily turned and smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Morning yourself." We made small talk as I poured my coffee, discussing the weather, her plans for the day. This level chatter that felt increasingly common between us lately. "I might be home a little late tonight," Emily said as she gathered her purse and laptop. "We have that big client presentation, so I'll likely need to stay after work to prep." I tried not to let the disappointment show on my face. "Okay, no problem. I'll just grab something easy for dinner." Emily pecked me on the lips, a routine goodbye, and headed out the door. I watched from the window as she climbed into her car and drove off, wondering when the distance had crept into our marriage. The day dragged at the office. Numbers and reports blurred together as my mind kept drifting back to Emily's distracted demeanor that morning. We used to be so connected, so in sync. Maybe a surprise visit after work would help reignite that spark. When 5 p.m. rolled around, I made my way across town to Emily's office building. The receptionist barely looked up as I strutted past toward the elevator bay. Emily's boss, Richard, had made her office on the top floor when he promoted her a few months back. Pretty swanky digs for an up-and-coming marketing manager. The elevator doors opened and I stepped into the plush waiting area outside Richard's office. Sweet. Emily's assistant, Heather, looked up in surprise. "Oh, Mr. Thompson. Emily didn't mention you were stopping by. Let me just check if she's free." Heather picked up the phone, but I waved her off with a smile. "No need. I'll just pop in and surprise her." I gave Heather a wink and strode toward the double doors leading to Richard's inner office. I gripped the handle, feeling a small thrill at the thought of Emily's delighted grin when I appeared unannounced. But the sight that greeted me drained every ounce of joy from my body. Emily was perched on Richard's lap, his hands roaming freely over her curves. Her lips were locked in a passionate kiss, soft moans escaping them both. In that singular moment, my entire world shifted off its axis. Emily broke the kiss and opened her eyes, freezing when she saw me standing there. Richard seemed oblivious until he followed her horrified gaze over his shoulder. "John," Emily's words caught in her throat. A red haze clouded my vision. Without thinking, my fist lashed out, catching Richard square in the jaw. He toppled backwards in his chair, taking Emily down with him in a heap on the floor. "John, what the hell?" Emily cried out, struggling to untangle herself from Richard's prone body. I stood there, chest heaving, as security rushed into the room. "Sir, you need to leave immediately," one of the guards barked, grabbing my arm. Rage and betrayal swirled through me. I wrenched free from his grasp. "Don't touch me. You all knew about this, didn't you?" I rounded on Heather, Emily's assistant, who shrank back in fear. "I had no idea, Mr. Thompson. I swear," she stammered. Emily finally managed to stand, straightening her rumpled skirt. Her face was a mask of shame and panic. "John, please let me explain." "Explain what?" I spat out a bitter laugh. "Why you've been screwing your boss behind my back. Throwing away our marriage for this weasel?" I gestured contemptuously at Richard, who was still sprawled on the floor, clutching his reddening jaw. 2 more security guards entered, moving to flank me. "Sir, you need to go now before we call the police," the first guard stated firmly. Emily's eyes went wide with desperation. "No, John, don't do this. Think about what you're doing." But I didn't respond. I simply turned and stormed out, the guards close on my heels. I had to get out of there before I completely lost control. The drive home passed in a blur of unshed tears and blind fury. How could she do this to me? To us. After everything we'd been through, everything we'd built, the Getty's photo of our wedding day mocked me from the upstairs hallway as I entered the house. I ripped it from the wall, hurling it across the room where it shattered against the banister, gasping for breath. I collapsed on the couch, putting my head in my hands. That's where the dark thoughts began to take root. I couldn't just let this go, let her get away with it. She had to pay, and so did that bastard Richard. An idea sparked in my mind. My hands shook slightly as I grabbed my phone, opening it to the camera roll. Bingo! I had snapped those photos as soon as I'd walked in on the tryst. They were so busy screwing each other that they didn't even notice me taking their photos, acting on some primal instinct to document the evidence. 3 damning images of Emily draped all over her married boss in a very compromising position. I felt a grim smile spread across my face as I began searching for Richard's home address. Over the next few hours, I learned that Richard lived in one of the ritzier neighborhoods. Across town with his wife Sarah, an interior designer Instagram influencer with a couple 100,000 followers who seemed to have no clue about her husband's wandering eye. By the time I pulled up outside the sleek, modern mansion that evening, I had formulated a plan. Richard's shiny black Porsche sat gleaming in the driveway. He was home. I exited my car and strode up the front steps, drawing in a deep, stealing breath. Then I rang the doorbell. It was Sarah herself who answered, looking as glamorous as her social media photos in a slinky cocktail dress. Her perfectly painted smile faltered slightly when she saw me. "Can I help you?" she asked, clutching the doorframe. "Hello, I'm John." I introduced myself. "You don't know me, but I know your husband quite well. Maybe too well, actually." I held up my phone, pulling up the incriminating photos. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth as she took in the shots of her husband in a romantic tryst, his tongue down some other woman's throat. "Oh my God," she whispered, her perfectly made-up face crumpling in anguish. "Who is that?" "That's your husband, Richard," I stated flatly. "And the woman he's cheating on you with, that's my wife, Emily." Sarah's eyes went wide with shock and disgust. "Emily, but she's one of my closer friends. How could they do this to us?" "I wish I knew," I replied bitterly. "I just walked in on them like that at his office today." Tears began spilling down Sarah's cheeks, her glamorous image shattering. "Why are you showing me this? To humiliate me more?" I shook my head. "No, I'm giving you the chance to take him for everything he's worth in the divorce. That smug bastard deserves to have his life ruined after what he did." Sarah stared at me for a long moment, then seemed to come to a decision. Straightening her shoulders, she met my gaze with a new-found hardness. "You're right," she stated, her voice regaining strength. "He's not going to get away with this. I'm going to bleed him dry and take half of everything." A small, vindictive smile crossed my lips. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." Over the next few weeks, the fallout from Emily's revealed indiscretion detonated like a thermonuclear bomb across our lives and social circles. As soon as I obtained proof of her affair, I didn't hesitate to plaster it across every available channel. The group text to our inner friend circle, complete with the graphic photos. An email blasted her family, including her parents and sisters. I even mailed printed out 8x10 glosses to a few key people at her office, ensuring her professional reputation was equally decimated. Everywhere Emily went, she was met with looks of shame, disgust, or avoidance. Her friends stopped returning calls and texts. Her own sister refused to let Emily come over for her kids' birthday parties. Even her parents turned their backs, calling her a disgrace. She crawled to me on her hands and knees, begging for forgiveness, for a second chance. Mascara streaked down her blotchy cheeks as she sobbed, promising she would change, that it was just a horrible mistake. But I felt nothing but cold satisfaction watching her world crumble. This was the punishment she deserved for so carelessly betraying me in the most painful way imaginable. I had the divorce papers rushed through, making sure to take her for every asset we'd built in our years of marriage. The big house, the cars, investments, all of it was mine. While Richard lost his reputation and savings in his own divorce with Sarah, Emily was left with quite literally nothing except the clothes on her back. The day the judge banged that gavel, I turned to my ex-wife with a look of pure disdain. Her head hung in defeat, shoulders shaking with the sobs of someone who had finally realized the colossal mistake they'd made. "This is what you get for your selfishness and ego," I stated coldly. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before throwing away everything for a cheap thrill." I turned on my heel and strode out of the courtroom without a backwards glance. For the first time in months, I felt unburdened, like a weight had finally been lifted. Emily got exactly what she deserved, and I could begin to breathe again. A new chapter awaited, and this time, there would be no distractions or deceptions to derail me, just peaceful satisfaction and the knowledge that true karma and justice had been served. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot.